pushing the rest of Central Committee on is making sure that we have more special committees that you can be a part of. So I've given a couple of suggestions that we're going to discuss at our next month's Central Committee, in addition to trying to, or one of the bigger ones is committee so that we can have more consistent money coming in and confidently hire an executive director that can at the very least be one person that is at Marion County Democratic Party headquarters. We're talking with Indiana Democratic Party because they're also looking for a space that is not as expensive as the PNC Tower, because the rates for parking are astronomically high. Mila's talking with IDP on that while they're getting settled. In addition to that, just continue to reach out. I'm coming to all these township meetings to make sure that we're connected with you all. I've got my card. I'm here to take questions and talk with you all after the meeting as well. So appreciate that you're all here. One thing that I do say is just the fact that you're here listening and getting involved. You're in the top 5% of people as far as political activism, and what you're able to bring back and talk to your friends is changing Marion County, changing Indiana. So appreciate that you're here and continue to do the good work.
The Marion County Recorder.
Hello, everyone. This is a fabulous looking group here. I'll just stand here. So I am Faith Kimbrough. I am your Marion County Recorder. Now, I'm not going to call anybody else, but by a show of hands, how many can raise your hand and let me know what you know about the recorder's office, if anything, minus U.S. Shoot on down. Does anybody know what the Marion County Recorder do for you as taxpayers? As Perry Township residents? Anybody?
We know the chant.
The chant. Oh, you know the chant? Oh, she heard the chant. Well, you can come here, please. Come on. Okay, so just stand right here just for a second. So, my office holds public records of property transactions, such as one more time, that's the last one, but property records such as
Liens,
deeds,
mortgages, and more.
let's go. Liens, deeds, mortgages, and more. Liens, deeds, mortgages, and more. Thank you so much. Give a round of applause. So my office is very essential. During COVID, if we would have shut down, you couldn't sell your house or buy one. And they say we're like the well-kept, little librarians, if you will. I have over 11 million records in my office. How many owns a home in here? Oh, I got your information. All your information, you guys, is in my office. If you're a veteran, how many veterans? Okay, good. You have any wives or husbands of veterans? Raise your hands, okay. So we keep a copy of their military DD-214 at our office as well. We had a young lady, her dad passed away, and she did not have the paperwork, so he did not get the proper military funeral after being a veteran. It's very important that you record that, and we record that for free. It's no cost to our veterans, okay? So I'm not gonna take up the time, this is not my meeting. It's just supposed to be an introduction, and I appreciate it. But as Wes said too, we have to get out to the polls. And I feel like in order to get your neighbors to come out to vote for us to win, we have to educate. Because now, at least 25 of you all now know exactly what my office does. So when people go out to vote, they know that they're voting for the Marion County Recorder, Faith Kimbrough, because that office holds public records of what?
liens, deeds, mortgages, and more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, it's time to introduce our keynote speaker. I reached out to her on TikTok, and she was very gracious to come.
Can we just hold it?
Corrine Straight posts a lot of
Hold it.
TikToks about
Hello, hello. Is it good?
Indiana issues, national issues, and just keep us it's all very well informed. She runs blueyers.com. Yep. And her mission is that no red state gets left behind, that Democrats are competitive in every single state. So
Absolutely.
Please welcome Corrine.
Thank you, Duran. Thank you so much. I'm really excited that you reached out to me. This is an honor. So I'm up in Elkhart County, and I am always happy to take a road trip down here. I feel like I could do that drive in my sleep, but don't worry, I'm not going to sleep on the road. My kids are in high school and they are band kids. So that means we are in Indianapolis like every weekend. So it's an easy breezy 3 hours down 31, which I say is the most boring drive in the world. Because it is. You don't have to turn, like when that GPS is like 130 miles without turning, I'm like, oh, all right, good podcast. So I didn't want to be, I think I emailed Duran this morning and I was like, hey, how long do you want me to talk? Like, probably should have asked you this beforehand. So I talked to myself in my car and figured some things out. I just wanted to share a general kind of message of hope that I am giving when folks in my life are reaching out to me now. And this can be my sister who is calling me hysterical saying, help me process this, I don't understand. And so I've kind of become that person for people in my life, which is fun. So if I say to y'all that there is a very high likelihood that I will not live long enough to see Dobbs overturned, how does that make you feel? Right? It's generally a couple of different reactions that I get. And for me, I have to tell you, the realization of what it truly means to play the long game, to plant a tree that I will never see bloom, to plant a tree I will never see bear fruit. When I understand what it means to play the long game, I'm filled with hope. I'm filled with motivation and relief, honestly. Relief that I don't have to do this in 2 years. We do not have to get this done in 2 years. And I want to put it in historical context because for me, that always helps. So the first women's rights convention to start working in an organized fashion towards suffrage was held in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. 72 years later, white women got the right to vote. 72 years. There was only one woman who was at the 1848 convention who lived till 1920. One woman made it. Everybody else died before it happened. The two women who organized it were Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. Stanton died in 1902. Mott died in 1880. So she died 40 years before her vision was realized. The NAACP was founded in 1909 as an organized, concerted effort to get Black men to regain the rights that they had had during Reconstruction that they had lost. W.E.B. Du Bois was a critical part of the founding and the early vision of the NAACP. He died in 1963, just a couple of months before Kennedy was assassinated, and 2 years before the Voting Rights and Civil Rights Acts of the mid-1960s. And so when we think about Stanton and Mott and Du Bois, because they didn't personally benefit from their work, did that mean it wasn't worth it? And I think all of us in hindsight can say no. No, they were willing to plant the tree. They didn't know if they would get to harvest, but they planted the tree. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna scroll my notes. Scroll. Oh yeah, this is fun. Being somebody who spends time on social media now, which honestly is not something I really expected to be. I remember learning what Facebook was in 2009. And I joke that my friend took advantage of the fact that I had just had a child because I had had my second baby. I was like a couple of days postpartum. And she's like, you got to get a Facebook. You got to put up pictures of the babies. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds stupid. She came over offering to watch my kids so I could shower, but she had an ulterior motive. She signed me up for Facebook while I was in the shower. And the profile picture she put was an upside down picture of my mom that she just pulled off my computer desktop so that it would force me to get in there and change the profile picture. So I always credit her with getting me on social media. But I signed up for TikTok in 2020, I think like a lot of people did. And I just did it so I could keep an eye on my children. Now they have to keep an eye on me. Because it is fun. I do have friends of my kids who come up to me and say, I love your TikTok. And that makes me smile because we know how social media works, right? It puts us into silos of ages and races and all of these other demographic information of who's going to see your videos. That I got 15-year-olds seeing my stuff, that's a good sign. I'll take it. And that they're taking it in. They're actually soaking it in. It's not just like, oh my God, their mom's on TikTok. Like they're learning and they ask questions when they see me. And that's really fun. But of course, because I'm on social media, I get so many people who go out of their way to send me lovely messages, which I always find is like, really? You had to send a DM for this? Yeah, right, Wes? You know the drill. And it's not just Republicans, y'all. I also get this from Democrats in more blue states, which I find very disheartening. And it's, give up, what are you doing? You're in Indiana. You're wasting your time. And they always say, well, are you crazy? And my standard answer is like, I might be crazy, but I'm not wrong. And when I think about that, when I think about how many people told W.E.B. Du Bois and Katie Stanton and all of these other people who came before us that they were crazy, they were like, sure, fine, that's your story. Say that we're crazy, we're going to keep working anyway. One of the most, I think, devastatingly successful achievements of the movement of white preservation or white supremacy or conservative ideology seeping into our education system. And it varies quite a bit depending on where you went to school. But I think one of their greatest successes has been ultimately convincing most white folks that the fight is over, that we did it. Like, here's the fight. We're on the other side of it. It's like all of us are Bush, if y'all remember. I know most people here are older than me, but like standing in front of that mission accomplished banner years before we even got close to accomplishing the mission, right? That's kind of what, and I tell you, my Indiana public education never warned me that I could lose my rights. I think about being a naive person in 2002 when I had an abortion. Never in a million years did I think 20 years later, my nieces, my goddaughters would not have that same right. That never occurred to me. And in those moments, I think of somebody like John Lewis, the civil rights activist and longtime congressman. He was 20 years, I like looking at the timeline of his life. He was 20 years old when the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Acts were passed. He was around 20. He didn't die till 2020. He lived another 55 years and he worked nonstop to preserve and expand the rights that were gained because he understood how tenuous that victory was. And ultimately, I think it's been a very successful accomplishment of folks on the right to convince many of us that the rights were permanent. And I will admit that those beliefs that I had a couple of decades ago, that progress was permanent, was a result of my naivete, my whiteness, and my privilege. Wasn't something I ever thought could be lost. The fight to overturn Roe, and I went down a fun rabbit hole with this one. There's some interesting characters in that fight. The fight to overturn Roe, began before the decision even came down. People really knew the way the courts were going to go. There had been a couple of cases leading up to Roe at the state level that had been very successful. One of my favorite heroes of that time period was Flo Kennedy, the great civil rights activist and attorney. And she actually argued the New York State case on overturning their abortion ban that paved the way for Roe. It was the same arguments that were used at Roe, which was medical privacy. And the work to dismantle that began right away. And they played the long game, 50 years. Many of those folks are not alive anymore who started that anti-abortion work. You know, they planted the tree. They didn't live to see Dobbs, but it was still their fight. And we can undo their undoing. We can undo what they undid if we're willing to do the same thing, if we're willing to plant that tree. And I told Cindy, Cindy and I could have been twins today because I almost wore my Jezebel Spirit shirt. But instead, I put on my 1987 IU basketball and national championship shirt. Happy March Madness first to all who celebrate. And a reminder that even though the IU men did not make the tournament, the IU women did, per the usual. Even though they lost, whatever, they made it. And the worst part about this time of year is like having to listen to Purdue fans gloat about it. But that's okay. I'm always going to fight for the Indiana team, no matter who they are. That's what I'm going to go for. So Sweet 16, let's go. I wore this shirt for a couple of reasons. Thinking about 1987 being, what was I, 3.5? The last time they won a national championship. They're still playing the game, right? For better or for worse. They've not made it there yet. They've not made it there again. The other reason I wear this shirt is because it was actually my grandfather's. This was my grandpa's shirt. And when he passed away, I got a stack of his t-shirts, which made me happier than you could ever imagine. Like, we're not a family that's passing down wealth or real estate or anything, but we're passing down t-shirts. And I'll take them. I have a couple of Indiana shirts for my grandpa. I also have his slow pitch softball league rec jersey from when he played slow pitch softball in Hammond, Indiana, which is where I'm from, where my family's from originally. Yes. From Hammond. What high schools?
My mother went to Hammond.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Everyone else lived in a different part. That's where they bought their house.
Yes.
Grandparents and great-grandparents.
Yep. I would have been, I know that, huh? Go. I was a Morton kid. So I was a Morton kid, but I believe right after we moved, the boundary changed, and I think I would have been a Gavitt. Yeah. It wouldn't have been my choice. You can't trust those people. Yes. Yep. They sure are. That's right. We got them. So wearing this shirt and thinking kind of about the product of who I am, the product of being who my grandfather raised me to be, who my parents raised me to be. And it's no surprise. I'm obviously a super white person, so there are plenty of white people in my family with whom politically we're not going to agree. But in addition to t-shirts, what I think unites, especially my family and all of us as Hoosiers, are these Hoosier values, right? Whatever Hoosier hospitality. And that, it sounds kind of cliche and it sounds kind of corny. But I actually think it, Cool, right? I'm glad you got that because I'll laugh to myself. I never know if like the things that amuse me are going to amuse other people. When I think of Hoosier hospitality, that's really where I find a lot of common ground. I live in a very red area. Seeing this on a township level, y'all have no idea how much this does not exist in the rest of the state. We are lucky if we get a county party. We are not getting down to the township level yet. I mean, my county was 77% for Donald Trump. I live in a town of 1,400 people. I think I'm the only person with even any kind of political signage outside of my home, which is fine because it starts some really fun conversations. And when we don't talk about party, we agree on almost everything. And for me, that's what I think of when I think of Hoosier hospitality. I think of the core values of just taking care of each other, of taking care of your neighbor. There is no political ideology to that. And if we want to continue doing that, if we want to continue taking care of our neighbors, we have to start supporting elected officials who are interested in us. And I've bridged some gaps that I thought were unreachable just in the last couple of years with people in my life. It's doable, again, if we're willing to plant that tree and never see it grow. What we are fighting for as Democrats, and I won't just say just as Democrats, but Democrats, moderates, liberals, progressives, anybody on that end of the spectrum, we're fighting for something good and not just good in, in the sense of an adjective, but just the good. Something that has been true for a really long time. And it's interesting to me how many folks in our state house and nationally that represent us who have the hubris to believe that the U.S. is special, that the U.S. is somehow exempt from principles of good government that have been true for millennia. Good government takes care of people. Good government does not say sink or swim, figure it out. It doesn't. And it's never worked. And I think, when we look at the United States as this little baby country, there's some hubris there. There's some arrogance. And we see it reflected at the State House, of course. We see it reflected in D.C., lots of it. And they're going to continue down this path, right? They're going to continue down the path of taking away rights, of expanding discrimination, of padding their bank accounts, and think that there's no consequence. But this is when I think of the MLK quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And our arc as the United States is really small compared to the rest of the world. And what our principles of a functioning civilization and a functioning democracy are basic necessities being met. Housing, healthcare, food, ambition, something to do with yourself, somewhere to put yourself, quality of life. And those are really principles of justice. That's really what justice is when we look at it kind of as a core principle. And to watch some of the nonsense happening, not only in Indianapolis, but on a national level, of people who think they can convince us that deporting brown people, taking away civil rights protections, giving tax incentives to the wealthy, that they can convince us that is justice is insane. We know better. We know it's not. And it's led me to actually bust out my classical political thought book from college, because I remember Plato writing about justice and injustice in the Republic. And that's what these people have me doing, is I'm going back to textbooks. I'm finding them on my shelves because they debate in Republic this idea that these concepts are new, that justice or wokeness or whatever they want to call it is something that we made up, is freaking hilarious, right? It's been around for a long time. It ain't nothing new. And they think they can convince us that it is, that they can convince us that it's just this woke concept. These leftists, AOC had her avocado toast and she just made it up. But the fallacy that Plato explores is that injustice is actually more profitable. And I think that's where we are right now. And even right now could be a span of a century or a span of a half a century, the right now time period. Injustice is dominating because injustice is temporarily benefiting a lot of people. A lot of people are making money. A lot of people are gaining stability, are increasing generational wealth. 95% of us are not. And that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable justice in the long term. When I watched the hearing last week, and I don't know, I was just telling Steph this a minute ago, I watch hearings in Indianapolis like my dad watches football on a Sunday. I'm screaming at the computer. I'm pulling my hair out. I'm yelling at it. I'm needing snacks constantly in my face. And when I watched one of our state representatives, I tried to find out how old he is. I can't figure it out, but just based on some photos, I believe he is younger than me, which is terrifying. He was questioning aloud whether providing funding for Medicaid, is that a just pursuit? He said, is it even just? That's up for debate. And I yelled to no one, no, it's not up for debate, sir. It's not up for debate. But that's the hubris that we are seeing right now. It's unsustainable. We just have to be willing to incrementally work and not hope for a quick fix. as so many before us have done. One of the great injustices that I've been thinking a lot about, especially as we look at economic issues, because for me, when I have conversations with folks, economics is always the one that seems to resonate. Even if people want to, oh, abortion's a women's issue, family planning's a women's issue, whatever. We know it's not a women's issue. It's also an economic issue. But to get to that, we have to kind of start at some bare bones thinking. And when I think of injustice, I think of the myth of trickle-down economics that was sold in the 1980s. Ronald Reagan, exactly. I think Ronald Reagan was the first president I remember watching on TV. Probably. And they knew then that trickle-down economics was not going to benefit us. They knew it then. They were able to market it. They just sold it really well. They knew it was going to benefit the top 5%. So that's when we saw deregulation, huge closures of state-funded health facilities and mental health facilities, tax incentives for the wealthy, real estate incentives for the wealthy, investment incentives for the wealthy. And it feels insane that when I was watching, whatever year, was that 16 or 17, when President Trump was rolling out the tax breaks for wealthy folks. And he's selling it as trickle-down economics. And I'm like, where am I? We've been here. This doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. And of course, the job creation and the wage growth that he promised never came to fruition. Surprise, right? Surprise it was a lie. Surprise it didn't work. Of course it didn't work. Economic solidarity, quality of life solidarity, educational solidarity, healthcare solidarity, I think that's where we start to find common ground. And not only with our folks across the aisle, but with people within our own party who don't feel heard or seen or motivated to turn out. And it's so interesting, like being in Elkhart County, the differences that you see around the state. And I think, oh gosh, who was it? I think it was Dana Black. I think I was in a Zoom with Dana Black. And she was like, for y'all, and she was talking to white people, she's like, for y'all, you got to worry about who they're going to vote for. For my people, I have to worry about if they're going to vote. And so it's such a stark reminder of the issues that we are all facing are very different. But ultimately, we can remember that the folks like Jim Banks, who send donuts to a town hall so he can just make fun of his constituents on social media, that's not going to be the good guy in the movie that's made on us in 50 or 60 years, right? Think about that, right? These people are the Scrooge McDucks. They are, let them eat cake. Exactly. These are, this is the injustice. This is the temporary injustice that is benefiting a few. And I want to leave y'all with a couple of my favorite stats, and they're not basketball stats, but just a couple of my favorite economic stats, because these have been conversation starters, and I look for an opportunity. It's usually when somebody is like complaining about kids these days and how they don't know how to manage their money, and talking about, millennials in like a derogatory fashion. And I remind them like, hey, I'm a millennial. We're not that young anymore. I'm sorry. We're adults. We got mortgages. I'm raising kids and I'm dealing with aging parents. Like, we're not that young anymore. You can't use millennial as a derogatory term for young person. Even though Matt Gaetz, when I looked up how old that man was when he was talking crap about millennials, he's a year older than me. And I'm like, sir, you're one of us. You can't talk about millennials. Jim Banks, he might be on a cusp, but he's 45. Again, depressing. We've got decades left with him. But economic-wise, and these stats are burned into my brain, and maybe I can help burn them into yours so you can just whip them out at the next party that somebody wants to talk nonsense about people getting Starbucks. It has nothing to do with Starbucks. In 1975, the average U.S. household paid 3% of their annual income for healthcare costs. in 2025, the average household, we're paying 18% of our annual income for healthcare. In 1975, for housing, we paid 15% of our annual income. We now pay 40%. So just looking at your pie, and it's so much easier to talk about percentages instead of talking about like dollar amounts and inflation, and there's so much math involved in that, but it's really easy to visualize when you look at your pie. My household pie in 1975 had less than a quarter of a slice going to two of my basic necessities, healthcare and housing. Oh yes, absolutely. 1975, 3% went to healthcare, 18% now. And then 15% went to housing in 1975, 40% now. Right? So look at that pie. Less than a quarter of my pie was healthcare and housing. I now have almost 60% of my pie is healthcare and housing. That did not happen by accident. That was deliberate. That was deliberate policy and political decisions to disenfranchise and financially harm the 95% of us. And talk about something that's unsustainable. This ain't gonna last. It can't. It can't. The only people who are still okay with that kind of unbelievable increase in just two base, not even counting food, not even counting college or fuel, those two basic necessities, the only people that are like, I'm cool, are people with generational wealth. And that ain't most of us. As much as the trolls online want to let me know that I probably got rich parents paying my bills, I do not. They really like reading those comments, but I do not. Now, could I move into their basement if I had to with my two children? 100% I could. They would take me in with open arms. Again, that's a privilege that I have parents that I can go move in with. It would be fine. We'd have fun together. We like each other. Wait, I've got cute kids. They actually look like my parents, so it's good for them. And when we think about all of the work that got us there, that got us to that 60% of our pie, it's work that can be undone. We just have to start having those conversations. And those are the kind of conversations that I have with people when they call me and they're panicking. Or when I'm raging in my basement because of something stupid that I saw on the house floor. The long game, the planting the tree. And there are very specific action steps that are going to need to be taken by the state party and the national party. And I'm so glad that Wes is here. I'm really hopeful that there's some kind of realization that's going to happen nationwide that ignoring red states is no longer the plan. It can no longer be the plan. Relying upon the swing states and the blue states and the turnout, the Democratic turnout in these large cities, not sustainable, because that's what happens when the message isn't there. When I look at the numbers from 2024, so the 2022 election and 2024 election, in each election, Indiana was around 35 to 38 state seats, so House and Senate, that were unopposed. Republicans ran unopposed. And that represents about 3 million Hoosiers. Now, not all of those are voters, of course, but 3 million, that's close to half of our population. For 2 election cycles, even going back to 2020, 3 election cycles now, that's millions of Hoosiers that never heard an alternative message. And when I get people who reach out to me and want to be nasty from New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, California, my family's in California, you knock it off, I know you. We in red states have been targeted in a way that blue states have not been. And I work really hard to get folks in other blue states to understand that, because I think they've taken it for granted that they can weather the national storm. We can't. We can't, based on what our legislature looks like. But they're like, yeah, we can weather it. We'll be okay. They're kind of starting to figure out, oh crap, maybe we can't. Michigan didn't go the way we wanted. Pennsylvania didn't go the way we wanted. And the fact that red states have been such a void of democratic messaging and progressive messaging and worker positive messaging and economic solidarity messaging, we were ripe for really what happened to us in 2010-ish, which was Project Red Map. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. I'm going to swear for a second, but it's the title of a book. This is like when I was a kid and my dad would let us swear if it was in a song. So we would make some very interesting CD choices just so we could swear. But the book is called Rat Fucked. It's from 2016. It's by David Daley. If you want to read it, talk about a rage-inducing read. But it's really good. It's super accessible. And Project Red Map, if y'all are not familiar with it, it was a concerted effort that started in 2005-ish, really. It really got off the ground in 2010. It was founded by the Koch brothers. And it was a deliberate effort to go into red states and red communities and flip the state house, flip the legislature to ensure that supermajority for map drawing. And when I have conversations with people in blue states, I'm like, why do you think they didn't come to New York? Why do you think they didn't come to Illinois? They came to Indiana, Idaho, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa. They came to the states where they knew Democrats had abandoned, honestly. And they went local. I mean, they came to local meetings like this. They schmoozed, they shook hands. Democrats have abandoned you. And they weren't lying about that. They lied about plenty of other stuff, but they weren't lying about that. It was real. And our red counties and our red voters, and as much anger that is there, I have a lot of compassion. I have a lot of empathy for people who just are not in it like we are. And those are the folks who can be swayed. Those are the folks who can be led to believe that immigrants are why 60% of their pie is going to basic needs now, that trans people are why 60% of the pie is going to basic needs, instead of actually addressing what the real causes are, what the root causes are. And people are a lot smarter than I think politicians give them credit for. And when you sit down and have these real conversations at your local library, at a coffee shop, even at a PTA meeting, those are fun. The education meetings are fun, especially in red counties, because most people, and I'm not kidding you, most people don't know that the president doesn't. Now, the Department of Education is a whole other thing. But as a whole, the president has nothing to do with your school funding. And these are people who are active on school boards. They don't have any concept, any relationship to state houses. And that's really where I started when I started doing social media stuff, because I'm obsessed with state legislatures. I got the opportunity to cover both Indianapolis and Lansing when I was in my TV days, because up in northern Indiana, we've got the Michiana, which is such a stupid name, but the Michiana media market, because it's Southwest Michigan too. And Southwest Michigan is fun because it's as red as we are. It's a lot of farmers, a lot of farmland, but covering two different state houses and understanding the power of what these people are doing under the radar. They love that we don't pay attention to them. And some of the most exciting conversations that I had during the last election involved just basic civics breakdowns for people. Let's look up who your state rep is. Let's look up who your senator is. And there were no dumb questions. Is this different than Todd Young? Yes, it is. Let me tell you who Todd Young is. Basic levels of democracy. So all of that is just kind of a glimpse. I just wanted to share where my brain was right now. These are obviously not specific action steps. That's where y'all come in. Y'all are the party leadership. Wes, go ahead, take it away. Go figure it out. But yeah, I did want to make sure that I left time for questions. Did I, Duran? Okay, no pressure. Yes, ma'am.
Jeff and I have a few things that we want to say. You want to talk first and then I'll talk.
I'm really glad you brought this up because Jeff
lived here now for 18 years. Before that, I lived 30 years in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Now, if you don't know Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, they haven't sent a Democrat to Congress in 170 years. Last Tuesday, Lancaster County went for Trump just 1 year ago by 15 points. On Tuesday, they elected the first Democrat state senator from Lancaster County in forever. He made up 15 points and tacked on another point above that, and now there's a Democrat going from Lancaster County to the state senate, which is exactly what you've been talking about. Secondly, last Wednesday I went to a Todd Young empty chair town hall meeting down in the Broadway Methodist Church in town. I don't know if anybody else was.
Oh yeah, it's there. Every Sunday and
Dedicated.
yeah.
There were at least 500 people there, according to the participants. One of the three main organizations that brought that together was one called Indivisible.
Yeah.
And if you're not into it, get into it. They had a 15, 20-minute presentation by three different groups on various subjects that you're all familiar with. And then they opened it up for the next 2 hours to people talking from the congregation, from the audience. And you name a group, and they covered it. The teachers, LGBTQ, veterans, senior citizens, mental health workers, and they all, and it was like a pep rally. It did so much for my heart that night, because let's face it, we've been struggling hard for the last year. And to see that much emotion, that much dedication, that much turnout was so heartening. And they're going to have several other of these empty chair town hall meetings. One is going to be for Victoria Starks, and then later on for Jim Banks. I'm sure he won't show. So
Jim Banks never shows.
No.
But it was just the most inspiring evening I've had in a long, long time. And so I just want to urge people to get involved with Indivisible and other similar groups, because what happened in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, it can happen anywhere. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just
Yeah.
say one thing, just to segue on what Jeff was saying. So if you want to get involved, and I encourage you to get involved, next weekend, it's called Hands Off, Remove, Reverse, Reclaim Central Indiana, April 5th, from 12 to 4 at the State House, to show up.
Awesome.
And voice your opinions, to be a part of it, but put some action into how we feel and what you're saying. That's what we can do, to show up and do something, to show that we're organized, that we want to make some changes, and we don't just want to stay silent and not do anything. So April 5th, Saturday at the State House, look at, if you want to look online, it's called handsoff2025.com. But, so that's next weekend, and what it is, and it's a demand and a warning and a rally cry that responds to the primary reasons for our mobilization. Trump and Musk are attempting an illegal power grab, a crisis we must stop. Trump and Musk and congressional Republicans are gutting services, raising prices, and racing towards slashing Medicaid, Social Security, and more. So this is an opportunity for us to do something, to organize and to get together and to show our support for the Democrats. Next Saturday, 12 to 4, State House.
I'm glad you said that, because that hands-off thing is nationwide, which is going to be pretty cool. I think I'm going to be at we're doing one in Elkhart County. Y'all, good Lord. Yes, of course.
My name is Virginia Rogers, and first I want to say there were three of us a couple weekends ago who did the postcard thing, all addressed to the felon, 1600 Pennsylvania. We said all sorts of nasty. I know you'll never see it, but I felt better. But anyway, so starting last Friday, my daughter and I made signs, and she emailed as many people as she could. And we stood on the corner, pretty much on the corner by that Kroger on the south side of Emerson and County Line. Tesla's too far back. We needed to see, we wanted to get the traffic, and we had about 17 people show up. And you could always tell who the Trump people were driving by because they said "fuck you" every single time. Went by without saying "fuck."
Yeah. Yeah.
They were just saying you're number one.
They would say, "Nice to have you." And so anyway, we're gonna be doing this however long. We're gonna try every Friday afternoon from 3 till 5, and just bring a sign. It's up to you what you wanna say. We had people from Bloomington come out, all over, they came up. So, please, come and join us. I mean, I gotta say, if it's raining tomorrow, I don't know that I'll be there, but, it's supposed to rain, but otherwise I'll be there.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you shared that story from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because I don't know if y'all have heard of it. There's a movement called Every State Blue. David Pepper, and there's a group in Missouri, Ohio, and Tennessee, and they focus on the bathtub model of funding local candidates, because just to get a Democrat to run, especially in a district where we know they're going to lose, and we have to be real honest about that, to get them to do it, there has to be a little bit of financing there to just ease the burden. Because what we're really asking people to do is, I need you to run so you can go knock on doors. It doesn't exist yet, Cindy. It doesn't exist yet. They're trying to launch one in Indiana. And so what their model would be after the primary, they figure out which candidates have the least amount of really chance of success and the least amount of funding opportunities, and they fund them. And it's been pretty successful. It's only a couple of years old in Ohio and Missouri and Tennessee. The state of North Carolina also did something very similar that did work in the last election, and their state party chair is, I do not remember her name, but I know she is 27 years old, which is inspiring. She took over the state and she's like, okay, y'all, like, old playbook is out, let's do this. And they broke the Republican supermajority by one vote, or by one seat. And that was really their goal in the first go around. Let's just break the soup. Let's make them have to have Democrats in the room, which we knew we were 4 seats away from doing in 2024 in Indiana. Definitely doable in 2026. So when people are kind of asking for, what can I look into? Where can we find kind of a local funding model? You can check out Every State Blue if that's something that, that speaks to you. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes.
Not about that.
Yeah.
But, so the question, and then I wanted to say my answer is, what do you say to yourself, and what can, so that other people can think about when you're thinking about, why am I doing this? Why am I putting the time and effort into this? To keep yourself motivated. Because, like you said, this is a very long game, and you're not going to see results immediately. Because at least 2 things that I think about. Number one, if you want to improve your life, politics might help, but you could also go get a different job. You can get a certification. You can, move cities. There's a lot of things that you can't do that have nothing to do with politics. But if you want to change how things are being run and change your community, the only way you can do that is through politics. Yep. And I used to be a Republican. My second Twitter handle was I want Rand Paul 16.
That's worse than a couple.
Rand Paul's fun, though. Rand Paul's fun.
But the point that I bring is, it took years of going through and talking with other friends and going through different classes in school to have 20 different things that I thought about the world change, and then change my entire view. So what I think about it with that is that I can talk to a Republican a million different times, and just because he disagrees or she disagrees with me all those times, the 1,000,000th time, maybe I get to them.
I think about that all the time. I got a really nasty video done about me. Let me tell you, thank you. The videos that piss people off the most are when I talk about white privilege. They get real mad about that. People don't like that, especially some white dudes in other states. Not even here. I'm like, I think of the quote from Mean Girls of like, you don't even go here. Like, she doesn't even go here. That's what I like. But I don't know how many of them would get it because I'm guessing not a lot of them watched Mean Girls, although they should because it holds up if you haven't seen it. The movie's over 20 years old. Actually, it's had my kids watch Clueless, too. I've got a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old, and we watched Clueless, and they were dying. That holds up. Solid movie, other than the cell phones, and there's a couple of weird references, and they're like, what is that? I'm like, it was 1995. Like, calm down, it's fine. But that movie holds up. It's very well done. When I get videos, and there was this woman that did a video about me, and she had the best, like, Long Island accent, and she was like, this bitch, what is she talking about? Like, she was so mad at me. And she was a white lady, and she had a bunch of filters on her face, so I couldn't tell how old she was, honestly. Based on some other pop culture references that she was making, I'm like, we're probably about the same age. And although as nasty as she was to me in that video, I was like, it's working. I'm a white lady in my 40s. Social media is going to show me to other white ladies in their 40s. So the message, over and over and over. I don't care if you hate me the first 100 times you hear what I have to say. Maybe 101, maybe 102. The video's getting where it's supposed to get. The message is getting where it's supposed to get. And I'm just one person. There are so many different channels that are being filled, gaps that are being filled with this kind of messaging. And that's what the motivation that keeps me going. I had one woman who sent me a message during the election, and I'm such a baby. I cry all the time, y'all. But I got emotional when I read it and when I responded to her because she said, I am 47 years old. She said, I have voted in every single election since I was 18, but this time I feel is my very first election because I always voted who my dad told me to vote for and who my husband told me to vote for, and I'm now divorced. I get to do this myself. Thank you for educating me was her message. It's not too late. And she asked me some other questions about like state house stuff. And she's like, I know this is such a dumb question. No, it's not. No, it's not. And it's not too late to get involved. And speaking of playing the long game, I think, especially here in Indiana, Fred Klipsch, if y'all are familiar with Klipsch, that dude started, well, it's called Hoosiers for Quality Education now. It was called something else when he founded it. But it was the school choice voucher privatization super PAC or PAC at the time. We didn't have super PACs back then. He started that in 98. Their first real victory, even before the voucher program was implemented, was property tax caps. Because that was one of the first bricks to put into place to start financially harming certain school districts were those tax caps. Once they got the brick in place, once they got a couple of years of, oh my God, this school is failing now, well, you took their money. Of course they're not doing well. Then it's school choice. Go to whatever school you want to, no tuition, doesn't matter. As long as you can drive, you can get there. Then it was vouchers. Then it was voucher expansion for the income limits, and now it's universal vouchers. So we're 1998 to 2025. They didn't care. They didn't care. They kept doing it. They kept working incrementally. And I mean, the next steps, honestly, are the complete dismantling of our public schools. And there's a lot of contention right now. You work for IPS. I have a friend that works for IPS. Indianapolis public schools, I mean, even my hometown, Hammond Public Schools, Gary Public Schools, near where I grew up, the densely populated school districts are just getting hurt so terribly by all of this that they're being used as the poster child of why public education just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And that's bullshit. We know it's, I talk a lot when I talk to people about education policy. Just look at Massachusetts. Look at Massachusetts. If you want to tell me that public education does not work, go look at Massachusetts. They faced very similar challenges. They were about 10 or 15 years ahead of us. They faced very similar educational attainment challenges in the early to mid 90s. And they made a different choice. They doubled down on public education. They doubled down on pay for teachers. They doubled down on funding and investing in their infrastructure. And kids in Massachusetts compete internationally. They take the PISA test. They compete internationally. There is a model there that works. We can't pretend, again, it's the hubris of United States exceptionalism, of Indiana exceptionalism. We can shun public education and we can be the beacon of the world. You can't. It hasn't worked anywhere else. And it's not working here.
You know, one of the things that really contributes to educational attainment is like, you know, what's going on in the lives of the children and the parents of the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, did Massachusetts have a governor that took the burden of healthcare costs off parents?
Mitt Romney? The famous Mormon? Our only Mormon presidential candidate, which I don't know why. I have Mormon family members, so the Mitt Romney Mormon thing, they were jacked about Mitt Romney. It's just fun to me that it's like, oh, we could have had a Mormon in the White House. But yeah, Mitt Romney, Massachusetts, is the example. It's the literal template for the ACA. We just did a Control F, and we took out Massachusetts, and we put in U.S. We're like, done. We made the ACA. But then they start calling it Obamacare, and then they make everybody afraid of Obamacare. 100%.
That's the part that I'm finding some people get it, right? Like if your parents can't make rent and your parents can't pay for childcare, so you're stuck in front of a iPad until you're 4 with Uncle So-and-so who's playing video games, that right there, that's your inequality, is those 5-year-olds showing up for kindergarten. And if the gap is there at that point, your ability to lessen that gap goes away as they continue to get older and things don't get better for their parents.
You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We've all seen the pyramid. When your basics aren't met, nothing else can be met. Nothing else can be achieved. Nothing else can be sustained. And that pieces of me as you just look at different economic trends and different wage trends over time, so much of that feels as if it's just a part of the plan. If we're overwhelmed and we're working too much and education is too expensive and we don't have time to have the community that we used to have. I mean, the social club attendance, that was something else that blew my mind. Kind of just recreational attendance in social clubs, places where we used to go gather because we had free time. We don't do that anymore. When I first started to talk about this with people close to me, talking about the number of hours worked. And it's probably people a little older than me, but this generation, as far as number of hours, we work more, we are more educated, and we make less money. In 1950, if you were born in 1950, and this is across demographics, 95% likelihood you were going to earn more money than your parents. A kid born in 2010 had a 50% likelihood. That's crazy. That's crazy. And that's not progress. And that's not justice for the long term. It's just an unsustainable model. And this group here really makes me smile because I couldn't drive down the street from my house and find this. And I hope y'all understand. I mean, you have your recorder here. You have Democratic Party representatives here. I don't know if they know where Elkhart is. So I want y'all to, I hope y'all appreciate this meeting. I hope you appreciate what you have within such a small radius. I remember when I was talking to Eric Hurt, who ran down in Congressional District 8, and we were just talking logistics. Like, what's the hardest thing for you to do running for office? And he's like, time. He's like, it takes me 4 hours to drive my district. He's like, Andre Carson is pissed if it's 30 minutes because he's stuck in traffic. Like, so when you look at the kind of disadvantages that are there, he's like, I have a regular job. He's like, I have 4 hours to drive my district. So there are so many vast differences in this state when you just drive an hour, that as we spend more time together, I'm definitely appreciating.
I remember, I grew up in Wells County, so under the 2000 to 2010 map, I was in the 6th district, which extended into Allen County. And it was part of Columbus, and it was a long city district. It was Mike Pence's district at the time. And the difference between the southern portion of Allen County and Columbus, I mean, that's pretty intense.
I was in North Vernon.
Yeah.
At that point. So
And that was the 6th district too?
That was 6th district also,
Yeah.
yes. My Pence was mine, that's where I was. Rural, poor county. Huge difference from Allen County.
Oh, huge difference.
I mean, well, miles, that's 150 miles, isn't it, at least?
At least,
And
probably.
please do tell your friends and family, if they wanna know where the Democratic Party is trying to change things, we'll be right here. 24th, 6:30 here.
Nice.
Right? Is that correct?
Yeah. I'll say that here if we can get it on the video. April 24th, 6:30 p.m. right here. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say to Wes, don't be ashamed. I mean, just like any disease, admitting to being a Republican.
I know we should have said, hello, Wes. As he said, I'm Wes. I used to be a Republican.
Secondly, I just want to say thank you for coming down. You're right. There's probably more Democrats in Perry Township than there is in the entire county of Elkhart.
Oh, yeah.
But I was actually at Ralph's Great Divide a week ago, and in walked Mayor Perrin, two-time mayor of Elkhart, Democrat. I believe he was replaced by a two-term mayor, a Democrat in Elkhart.
Yes.
I think Frank O'Bannon may have taken Elkhart in his second.
I believe he did.
He did.
What happened in
Probably, I don't know if Kernan did or not, he was close.
No, we didn't.
So again, they're up there.
Yeah.
They're in there.
Yep.
You need to drive them out. I just wanted to give you that piece of positivity on your way.
Thank
back.
you. I appreciate that because the defeatist message, I think is helping certain Democrats also maintain power, because if they convince us in certain places that it's not worth our time, the ambitions aren't there, the goals aren't big enough. And I do think there is a real opportunity on the national level to start getting some attention paid to our redder places. So thank you for saying that, because it's weird to hear different takes on kind of the stuff that I do, or the way that certain people within the party are characterized, or I've been told, that I ruffle feathers, or I upset people, or and I don't think I think somebody was talking about, like this idiot in her 20s who obviously didn't even grow up in Indiana. And I'm like, I'm in my 40s and I was born here. But I think there's motivations on either side. There's motivations on the Republican side, and there's motivations on some of the more establishment Democrat sides to make people feel like it's hopeless. But we know that it's not.
Can I say something about that?
Of course.
Some of the same people that I think we know, some of those people are out there who have that defeatist mentality. They should also try and remember, though, that in their lifetime, probably even when they were voting, they saw Democrats get elected both statewide. MFI won every county except for 2, and I can name the 2 off the top of my head. I lived in one of those counties when he ran for re-election for governor. Your old congressional district, back when Tim Romer was there.
Tim Romer and
Joe
Donnelly.
Multiple times when the congressional district in Elkhart was there. Joe Long Thompson, who ran for governor in 2008, was elected to Congress from Northeast Indiana, from that same Allen County.
From third.
The third. Yeah, because my home of Wells County went from 6 to 3 in the 2010 redraw. So.
And remember, 2010, that's the result of Project Red Map. It really, on a national level, it was launched they really started in 2008. They targeted Indiana, Oklahoma, and I think Missouri very early on to get to that 2010 mark. So those 2010 map redraws is when I moved from the 3rd district into the 2nd district. That's when Jackie Walorski, who is Rudy Yakum's predecessor, she cemented the 2nd district. That's when we saw Jim Banks cement the 3rd district, Marlon Stutzman in the 3rd. So that 2010 map redraw critical. That was a critical victory for Republicans. And game recognizing game here, like y'all had a strategy and you did it. And you put money into it. And they were willing, again, to come to these meetings, to come to local meetings where Democrats hadn't attended for probably a decade. So it can be done. Anytime anybody wants to argue, Indiana's red, Indiana's red. I don't like to use, Obama was, of course, that was fun. That's kind of, we can say, oh, we voted for Obama. That was fun for me, just like personally. It was less than 1%, and none of the Democrats won the down ballot, but Republicans pretty much secured things down ballot. So it was great on a national level. That really wasn't a blue Indiana. We saw a blue Indiana really in the early 2000s, a purple Indiana too. So it can be done. It can be done. And I'll stop talking because I know it's late. So thank you.
Sorry, y'all, I'm a little late. I good to see you. I'm so glad I did. I'm so fired up. Thank you so much.
Oh,
and I took down your notes and your data, so I appreciate.
Thank you.
There's some familiar faces and new. My name is Aisha Ahmed. I'm here for all things campaign for